Alright guys, so I have another request video for an OBT Care Sheet P. Marinus. It's the Usambara baboon. You can see it back in there. These tarantulas, the video was requested by unrealherpkeeper. I'll put his name up in a little annotation. If you haven't seen his videos, you should go check him out. He's got some really good videos. Anyway, I would say, sorry, I'm still a little sick, so I'm going to be coughing and stuff. OBTs are, I kind of want to say, an intermediate kind of category tarantula. They're super easy to take care of. It's almost hard to kill them. They're so hardy. But at the same time, they're extremely fast and extremely aggressive. This tarantula kind of worries me even more than my pokey. The bites aren't that bad. It's only like a bee sting kind of thing. You know, it might hurt a little bit worse because they have bigger fangs. But as far as venom, it's not very potent. But this one worries me way more than the pokey does, just because it's crazy. I get in my bathtub, I close the drain because it's gonna run 90% of the time. So yeah, you don't want it anywhere where it can run and hide. Anyway, getting the care. Temperature is just like most tarantulas, room temperature, probably around 75. You know, really they do a little bit better, I think around 78 or 79 from what I've read, especially if you get a sling. They will grow a lot faster at that rate, at that temperature. Takes them about 1.5 years to get to adult size, which is 4 to 5 inches. They are semi-arboreal, which means most of them that I've seen and heard about, sorry, it's kind of boring that it's just sitting here on this one thing while I'm talking. Most of the OBTs that I've heard about are more burrowers, but mine, as you can see, is arboreal. You generally want to give them around 3 inches of substrate at least. Really 4 to 5 if you can afford to do so, because, you know, like I said, they will burrow sometimes. And mine has got about 2 inches there, and on the back side you can see it's got about 3 inches. But it is never even slightly burrowed. An adult size should have probably I think a 5-gallon enclosure is what they say. This one's almost a tiny bit small. I think it's about 3 gallons. So yeah, it could be a little bit bigger, but it really rarely leaves its little nest back there, so it doesn't really matter. Of course, a water dish, which I need to fill up mine right now. Actually, I need to get something a little bit bigger, but they like medium humidity. I think around 50 or 60%, which is not really much higher than a normal room's humidity. What I do is I do the whole overflow the water dish. Whenever I fill the water dish, usually once a week, I overflow it and let it kind of flood this half of the tank over here a little bit. And that's it. Maybe every few weeks I'll actually spray down the whole tank a little bit, but you definitely don't want it to get too humid. They are from Africa, which makes them an old world tarantula. They are extremely tolerant of different landscapes. They have a huge range that they live in Africa, you know, most of Africa being dry, but they also live in some kind of more tropical areas of Africa. So that's why they're kind of known for being so hardy. You know, people say you can keep them completely dry or keep them wet and they're still going to live, which is, I think it's true. Yeah, they'll live, but, you know, just because they're living doesn't mean they're living healthy. So you'd still want to try to keep the optimum set up for them for sure. What else have I missed? You know, like any tarantula, you want to make sure and have good cross ventilation. You know, you don't want the air to get stagnant. And yeah, I think that's about it. You know, they eat a few crickets a week, or I'm feeding mine roaches now, so about 1 adult roach a week. If y'all don't know about roaches, I've had a bunch of videos, I've talked about them a bunch, but an adult dubia roach equals about 10 crickets. So, you know, if you can feed one of those every week or two, it's better than throwing a bunch of crickets in there. Anyway, yeah, I don't know if I missed anything. kind of like usual. I didn't read anything off. I'm just kind of winging it off the top of my head, so I'm sure I forgot something. Care for slings is pretty similar. You know, obviously you want to put them in something smaller, a little deli cup, or you know, I've even got some in this, and then my communal setup in here. But you know, it's similar. The only thing difference really is with watering. You know, you can't put a water dish in there. Obviously, they're too small; they'll drown. So once every 3 or 4 days, I give them a light spray. That way, they have something to drink. Because they do like a tiny bit more humidity than the adults do. But other than that, it's pretty easy. Like I said, they're, as far as care is concerned, they're beginner tarantulas. They're great, super easy to take care of. One of the hardiest species out there for sure. The only reason I would put them in an intermediate category is because they are super, super mean, and they will bite without hesitating. But other than that, they're really awesome, beautiful tarantulas. You can see she just chills back up in there. But yeah, I hope this kind of answers any care sheet questions. As far as substrate, the same as all mine. I'm using Eco Earth. You can use normal potting soil. I've seen your videos. I know that you know what kind of substrate to use, but just for anybody else, you know, never use any kind of bark. A lot of things say you can use vermiculite, which I use. That's what I started off using, was vermiculite with a little bit of dirt, like in this enclosure, and I can't stand it. Definitely recommend that you use either potting soil. Make sure there's no fertilizers added. It's just straight up potting soil or topsoil. But really, these bricks of Eco Earth I found work amazing. I think I did all these tarantula enclosures with one, maybe 1.5 bricks, and I've changed them out a few times too. So anyway, yeah, take it easy. Hope that answers your question. You know, if not, just leave me a comment and I'll try to answer any other questions. Of course, I forgot the one thing, you want to have a hide. I choose to use cork bark just because it looks more natural, just kind of half bury it in the ground like that. But you know, you can use a pot, anything you want. Keep a hide in there. Anyway, take it easy.